I'd like to focus on the way Teiresias is thinking, and that his thinking, as expressed by this plural noun phrenes, is grounded, and that is expressed by the word empedoi, which I translated as grounded because I was thinking of your research, Claudia, on the basic meaning of empedos in the singular, empedoi in the plural, which is literally being in the ground. And that's why I thought of translating here empedoi as grounded. And what I'm thinking about is that if you imagine the hero cult of Teiresias, as it's actually going on in, I'll think of an example, 6th century Thebes, where he was a cult hero. Or if you like, 5th century Thebes, I don't care. The worshippers, if they want to make contact with the consciousness of Teiresias, would do all the proper rituals like slaughtering a ram and then pouring the blood of the ram into the ground in order to make contact, mental contact with Teiresias. All fine. And how can I do that? I can do that because Teiresias is grounded there. And he's got his phrenes, his thinking, that can get activated if I pour some ram blood into the ground, and it makes, shall we say, contact. And then synapses get firing. So how do you translate that into a situation where now we're in Hades? Hades is transitional. It's where you see images. And so you see the image of Teiresias. And you still go through the motions of what you would do in real life when you're not in Hades, when you're not in the realm of unconscious. I mean in real life when you're worshiping Teiresias. And in a sense, if I try to transfer the realities of hero cult into this transitional, hazy, misty situation of Hades, if I'm concentrating on Teiresias, I'll still think of him as being exceptional because I'll think of him as the way he is when I worship him and make contact with him.
But I think what we were just discussing in an earlier conversation of this passage is that idea of exceptionality, we might want to revise that a little bit.
Sure.
And what you're pointing out is that maybe the whole process of this ritual is about making the phrenes of a hero generically
That's it.
steadfast and grounded. Is that what you're arguing, Greg?
Well, let's say I'm exploring and heading in that direction because this way I could understand how if I hear this, then I can apply this kind of relationship to other relationships. Right now I'm worshiping a hero in another place, like Athens. And I'm worshiping Oedipus, of all people, who is a cult hero in Athens. And if I want to make contact with his consciousness, for that moment, I need to have that idea that he's grounded. And then if I want to picture all of these situations in an omnium gatherum way, then when Odysseus is being transitional, he can go through these motions, and he will go through these motions with Teiresias because that's what he was advised to do by Circe.
You know, Greg, I think one thing that you might actually find interesting is the idea that the same word for grounded can be used to describe the word sema.
Exactly. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, for instance, there are many passages in the Odyssey where they describe the signs that Odysseus is giving to people, and people recognize those signs as steadfast. And that's a process of recognition.
And the key to the steadfastness is the localization, the groundedness of cult, maybe.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And by the way, this helps us understand why the parents of a very famous person called him what they called him, which is Empedocles. Empedocles is he who has a Kleos that is grounded.
Right. But the other thing that we should think about with this word empedos is that it's not just for steadfast, grounded, as in not moving. So in,
No,
let's say, a
yes.
fixed and rigid way,
Yes, no.
but also steadfast in motion. So, and I think that you have talked about the way that Kleos or fame can be viewed both through the poetics of
Yes.
rigidity and the poetics of fluidity.
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely, yes.
And so I think it's, and at the same time, it's about the way the motion of a chariot around a turning post, which can be a sema.
And it's steadfast.
Okay, so,
Yes.
and it's about not swerving. What I think this allows us to do when we think about the word empedos, and also about a very closely associated word, phrenes,
Yes.
is that it allows us to merge these ideas of the poetics of restraint and the poetics of incitement with the
Beautiful.
poetics of rigidity and the poetics of fluidity, all in one
I
word.
love it.
And then
That's
the fact that it
beautiful.
can be used with this idea of Kleos, or this concept of Kleos, and the name Empedocles, it might be teaching us something about.
Oh, I love
That
that. And I think what we need is another metaphor in English, because I think if we say grounded, it does suggest not moving. And what we want is something that is steady, whether it's moving or not. How about
That's-
steadiness?
Steadiness is exactly, I think, the
So
word.
you accept that?
I think that is it exactly.
Steady.
So it's about almost an inertial sense, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
that if it's in motion, it's going to continue staying in motion without swerving,
Good.
or if it's in place, it's going to stay in place.
I love that. And it works in English too, because you can say things like steady as you go
Right.
and steadfast and a steady pace. And it's still all related to being able to step on the ground rather than not knowing where to step. You mentioned the word asphales. Asphales means not slipping, as in not slipping on slippery ground. So it's still ground, but it's how you step, how you move, or how your horses step.